What happens when a Hollywood legend walks onto a daytime talk show, expecting a normal conversation only to get blindsided by a host who believes she knows better than everyone else? All it took was one comment about patriotism for Sunny Hostin to spark a firestorm, one that would end with Clint Eastwood doing something nobody ever imagined they'd witness on morning television. The studio lights were blinding that morning as Clint Eastwood stepped onto the View set. The audience erupted. Here was a man who had shaped American cinema for decades, a director of masterpieces, a cultural icon whose presence commanded respect the moment he appeared. He gave a small wave, calm, unhurried, that unmistakable Clint Eastwood half-smile as he made his way to the interview chair. Whoopi Goldberg opened smoothly. "Clint, it is so good to have you here. We've wanted this conversation for years." Clint nodded. "Well, I appreciate the invitation. Glad to be here." Joy Behar jumped in, upbeat. "Your new film is getting incredible reviews. What drew you to this story?" Clint leaned forward, steady as ever. "It's a story that needs telling. Ordinary people, extraordinary courage, sacrifice, what it means to stand up for what you believe in." The first several minutes were effortless. Sarah Haynes asked about directing. Alyssa Farah Griffin praised his discipline. The audience laughed at his old set anecdotes, listened intently to his thoughts on filmmaking. Then Sunny Hostin saw her opening. "Clint," she said, her tone shifting sharply, "I want to change gears for a moment. You've been very vocal about your political views over the years. Some would call them controversial." Clint didn't flinch. "I have opinions like anyone else. I don't think having an opinion is controversial." Sunny pressed. "But with a platform your size, don't you think you have a responsibility to use your voice more carefully? Especially when some of your views align with movements that many people find problematic?" The air tightened. The audience quieted. The hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Clint remained composed. "Everyone has a responsibility to be honest. I've never claimed to speak for anyone but myself. People can agree or disagree. That's the beauty of it." Sunny leaned in, sharper now. "But when you speak at rallies, when you embolden certain groups, you can't just hide behind 'It's only my opinion.'" Whoopi tried to intervene. "Sunny, maybe we should—" "No, Whoopi." Sunny cut her off. "This matters. We have a responsibility to ask tough questions." Clint's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you," Sunny said, even though her tone said otherwise. "I'm asking if you understand the impact your words have on communities that already feel marginalized." "Marginalized by what?" Clint asked. "By people having different opinions?" Sunny scoffed. "That's a very simplistic way to look at complex issues." "Maybe complex issues sometimes have simple solutions," Clint replied. "Like respecting that people can disagree without becoming enemies." Joy Behar stepped in. "But Clint, you have to admit that some rhetoric coming from the political side you support has been divisive." Clint turned to her. "Divisive is in the eye of the beholder, Joy. What some call common sense, others call conflict. That doesn't make either of us wrong. It means we see the world differently." Sunny jumped back in, voice climbing. "Is it common sense to support policies that hurt immigrants? Women? People of color?" "Now hold on," Clint said, his voice firming. "I've never supported hurting anyone. That's a gross mischaracterization of what I believe, and frankly, it's offensive." Sarah attempted to cool things down. "I think maybe we're getting a little heated." "No, Sarah," Sunny interrupted again. "I want to hear this. Because Clint needs to understand how his words land for people who do not look like him." Clint stared at her steady, unblinking. "What does that mean?" "People who do not look like me." "You know exactly what it means," Sunny replied. "You are a wealthy white man in Hollywood. You've had every advantage. Maybe you should listen more and talk less when it comes to communities you've never been part of." A gasp rippled through the audience. Alyssa shifted in her chair. Whoopi closed her eyes as if bracing for impact. Clint's voice dropped lower, quieter, more dangerous. "So, Because of the color of my skin, and the money I earned after 50 years of hard work, my opinions don't matter? That's what you're saying. I'm saying you need perspective, Sunny shot back. I'm saying maybe you don't understand what life is like for people who haven't had your privileges. And you do? Clint asked. You sit here on national television. You make a good living. You have a platform. What struggles are you going through that I couldn't possibly understand? Sunny's face tightened, color rising in her cheeks. I have faced discrimination my entire life, she snapped. I've had to work twice as hard to get half as far. That is something you will never understand. I grew up with nothing, Clint said, steady, controlled, but with an edge. I worked odd jobs. I scraped by. I fought for every opportunity I ever got. Nobody handed me anything, so the idea that you can sit there and dismiss everything I've done, everything I am, because of some assumption you've made about my life. His eyes locked on hers. That is the real prejudice here. Prejudice? Sunny's voice jumped nearly an octave. You are going to lecture me about prejudice? Joy tried to jump in. Clint, I think what Sunny is trying to say is, I know exactly what she's trying to say. Clint cut her off, something he rarely did. She's saying my opinions are worthless because of who I am. She's trying to silence me because we disagree politically. And frankly, I didn't come here to be attacked. Attacked? Sunny laughed sharply, a cold, incredulous sound. You think this is an attack? This is a conversation. Or are you so used to everyone treating you like royalty that any pushback feels like a threat? Alyssa finally spoke. Sunny, come on. That's not fair. Stay out of this, Alyssa, Sunny snapped. Whoopi raised her voice. Okay. Everybody needs to take a breath. But Sunny wasn't finished. She turned back to Clint like she was returning to a fight she planned to win. You want to talk about respect? How about respecting the fact that your views hurt people? How about acknowledging that, maybe, at your age, you're out of touch with modern America? Out of touch, Clint repeated, slowly, dangerously calm. Because I believe in personal responsibility? Because I believe in the Constitution? Because I think people should be judged by their character and not the color of their skin? He shook his head. Those are old-fashioned values now, apparently. Those are dog whistles, Sunny fired back. Everyone knows what you really mean. Clint's eyes didn't leave hers. No. You think you know what I mean. You've already decided who I am based on your own biases. You haven't listened to a single thing I've actually said. You just want to put me in a box so you can feel superior. Superior? Sunny's eyebrows shot up. I am trying to educate you. I don't need education from you, Clint replied, his voice turning steel. I've lived a long life. I've worked with every kind of person you can imagine. I've learned from experiences you couldn't possibly understand. And I certainly don't need lectures from someone who believes that disagreeing with her politics makes someone a bad person. Sarah tried again. Can we please just let him talk? Sunny cut her off with a smirk. Let him tell us all how hard his life has been. That was the breaking point. Clint stood. The audience went dead silent, like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. I came here in good faith, he said, looking directly at Sunny. I came here to talk about my work. To have a conversation. But you didn't want a conversation. You wanted a spectacle. You wanted to score points by taking down someone who doesn't agree with you. Sit down, Clint, Whoopi urged. Let's talk this through. But Clint wasn't sitting. I've been disrespected before. I've been attacked before. But I've never been on a show where the host actively tries to twist everything I say into something ugly. Where she dismisses my entire life because I don't fall in line with her worldview. Sunny rose too, refusing to back down. You want to talk about twisting words? Your entire political philosophy is built on twisting the truth to fit your narrative. My narrative? Clint's voice rose for the first time, quiet thunder. My narrative is that people should be free. Free to think. Free to speak. free to live their lives without being told they're wrong by people like you, who think they have all the answers. People like me? Sunny shot back. What does that mean? It means people who are so convinced of their own righteousness that they can't see past their own noses, Clint said. People who claim to be open-minded but are actually the most closed-minded ones in the room. People who preach tolerance but show none to anyone who disagrees with them. Joy stood now too. Clint, you are out of line. I'm out of line. Clint turned to the whole panel. I'm not the one who turned this into an ambush. I'm not the one who launched personal attacks. I came here as a guest, and I've been treated like a criminal. Alyssa spoke softly. I don't think anyone meant for it to go this way. Maybe not everyone, Clint said, his gaze returning to Sunny. But someone certainly did. Sunny folded her arms. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Tough questions? Clint laughed, but it was sharp, humorless. You haven't asked me a single tough question. You've made accusations. You've put words in my mouth. You've insulted me. But you haven't asked me anything resembling a real question. Whoopi tried one last time. Clint, please, sit down. We can reset this. Clint shook his head. No. We cannot. Because the problem isn't what was said. The problem is what was meant. And what was meant is pretty damn clear. He pointed directly at Sunny. I am not welcome here unless I agree with everything she says. That's not true, Sarah said quickly. We have guests with different viewpoints all the time. Do you treat them like this? Clint asked, eyes cutting through her. Or is it just the ones with conservative values? Sunny jumped in before Sarah could respond. Your conservative values are hurting people. When are you going to take responsibility for that? My values aren't hurting anyone, Clint said, his patience visibly cracking. My values are about freedom, about opportunity, about hard work. If that offends you, that says a whole lot more about you than it does about me. There it is, Sunny said, triumphant. The real Clint Eastwood, dismissive, condescending, completely blind to his own privilege. You don't know me, Clint said quietly but with a force that made the room still. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I believe. All you know is the version of me you invented because it fits your narrative. My narrative is equality, Sunny fired back. My narrative is justice. What's yours? My agenda, Clint said, is living my life according to my principles and letting others do the same. But apparently, that is too much to ask. The other hosts were glancing back and forth, like spectators trapped courtside at a match they couldn't interrupt. The audience didn't move, didn't breathe. Sunny stepped closer. You know what your problem is? You're stuck in the past. The world has moved on. You haven't. Maybe I don't want to move on to a world where people are judged by their politics instead of their character, Clint said. Maybe I don't want to move on to a world where having a different opinion gets you ambushed on national television. Nobody is attacking you, Joy insisted. We are having a dialogue. This is not a dialogue, Clint said flatly. A dialogue requires two people listening to each other. No one here has listened to a single word I've said. You've just waited for your turn to attack. Alyssa tried once more. Clint, I've been listening. I understand your frustration. Do you? Clint turned to her. Then why haven't you said a word to defend civil conversation? Why have you let this devolve into a circus? Sunny let out a sharp laugh. A circus? You're the one making a scene. I'm making a scene? Clint's disbelief broke through his restraint. I've been sitting here trying to have a reasonable conversation while you've been lobbing grenades at me. If you think being asked about your political views is grenades, you're even more fragile than I thought. That was the moment. You could see it hit Clint like a switch being thrown. I'm done, he said. Whoopi shot up from her chair. Clint, wait, don't leave like this. But he was already unclipping his microphone. I should have known better, Clint said. I should have known this wasn't about my film or having a real conversation. This was about scoring political points. If you leave, you're just proving you can't handle criticism, Sunny called out. Clint stopped, turned, looked her dead in the eye. Criticism is fine. I've taken criticism my entire career, but there is a difference between criticism and character assassination. Between hard questions and ambushes wrapped in moral superiority. So you're running away? Sunny challenged. Just like everyone else who gets pushed on their views. I'm not running, Clint said calmly. I'm choosing not to participate in this anymore. There is a difference. Joy stepped toward him. Clint, please. Let's talk this out. Talk what out? Clint asked. She's made up her mind about me. Nothing I say will matter. I could sit here for another hour, and she still wouldn't hear me, because she doesn't want to understand me. She wants to defeat me. Sunny smiled a thin, icy smile. I already have. The other hosts stared at her, stunned. Even Whoopi looked shaken. Clint nodded slowly. And, there it is. This was never about conversation. It was about winning. He gestured toward her. Well, congratulations. You won. I hope you're proud of yourself. I'm proud I stood up to someone spreading harmful ideas, Sunny said. Harmful ideas, Clint repeated. Like freedom? Like personal responsibility? Like judging people by their character instead of their group identity? Yes, very harmful. Clint, Sarah tried again. I really think if we just... But Clint was already walking toward the exit. Thank you, he said, looking at the few hosts who had tried to keep things civil. As for the rest of you, I hope someday you learn that different opinions aren't threats. They're opportunities to learn. Sunny's voice cut through the silence. Learn what? Sunny called after him. How to be more intolerant. Clint stopped one final time at the edge of the stage. Slowly, he turned back toward her. And for a moment, the entire studio went silent. That stare, the Clint Eastwood stare, hung in the air like a warning shot. The same look that had frozen outlaws in dusty saloons was now aimed directly at Sunny. Learn, he said evenly, that treating people with respect, even when you disagree with them, is not weakness. He let the words settle. It's strength. Something you clearly do not understand. And with that, Clint Eastwood walked off the view set. The audience didn't know what to do. Some people clapped. Some stayed completely still. A few looked like they wanted to rewind what they had just witnessed. At the table, the hosts looked at one another, each wearing a different shade of shock. Sunny sat back down, failing to look composed. Her jaw was tight, her posture stiff. She'd pushed and poked and prodded, certain she could make Clint back down. Instead, he had walked out on his own terms. Whoopi lowered her head into her hands. We need to go to commercial. But the cameras were still rolling. They caught everything. Sunny trying to hold her expression together. Joy shifting in her seat, deeply uncomfortable. Sarah and Alyssa exchanging a look that said this went too far. Whoopi looking exhausted, like she'd aged 5 years in the last 10 minutes. Joy finally broke the silence. Well, that was intense. Sunny straightened in her chair. He couldn't handle being questioned. That's what happens when people live in echo chambers. Alyssa shook her head. Sunny, come on. That was more than questioning. That was a lot. I said what needed to be said, Sunny insisted. Someone has to hold these people accountable. Accountable for what? Alyssa asked. For having different political views? For using their platform irresponsibly, Sunny shot back. For spreading ideas that hurt vulnerable communities. Sarah finally spoke. I think maybe we could have approached that differently. He's a guest. We invited him. And as hosts, we have a responsibility to ask hard questions. Sunny countered. I'm not going to apologize for that. Whoopi looked directly at her. Nobody is asking you to apologize for hard questions. But maybe think about how you ask them. Sunny frowned. What does that mean? It means, Whoopi said softly, there's a way to challenge someone without attacking them. There's a way to have a political discussion without turning it personal. It wasn't personal. Sunny protested. You told him his opinions didn't matter because of who he is, Joy said quietly. That felt pretty personal. Sunny glanced around. For the first time all morning, she could tell she didn't have the backup she thought she did. So now you're all turning on me? She asked. Nobody's turning on you, Sarah said gently, but we just watched a Hollywood legend walk off our show. That is, not nothing. He made the choice to leave, Sunny replied. That's on him. Is it, though? Alyssa asked. Because from where I was sitting, it looked like he was pushed. The stage manager was desperately signaling. They needed a commercial break. They needed something. But no one quite knew where to go from here. Whoopi took a steadying breath. Okay. We need to address this. We just had a heated exchange with Clint Eastwood. Tempers flared. Things were said. He chose to leave. We need to acknowledge that happened. I stand by everything I said, Sunny stated plainly. Whoopi looked at her. I'm sure you do. But standing by what you said and being proud of how you said it are two different things. Before Sunny could fire back, Whoopi turned to the camera. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss what just happened and try to make sense of it all. The commercial rolled, but backstage, everything was chaos. Producers scrambled. Executives were already on the phone. Social media was exploding. When they returned, the set was subdued, almost somber. Whoopi addressed the viewers. We just had a very difficult moment on this show. Our guest Clint Eastwood left during a heated conversation. Joy added, these are passionate times. People feel strongly about things. And we still have to maintain respect, Sarah said. Even in disagreement. Sunny sat quiet for a long moment before speaking. I asked questions I felt needed to be asked. If that made our guest uncomfortable, I can't control that. Alyssa turned to her. Maybe we should think about the environment we create. Whether we're actually trying to understand people or just prove them wrong. I wasn't trying to prove him wrong, Sunny said. I was trying to hold him accountable. Whoopi raised a hand. I think we all need to reflect on what happened today. About how we talk to people we disagree with. About what kind of conversations we want on this show. The segment ended awkwardly. The show limped through the rest of the hour. But everyone knew that what had happened, with Clint Eastwood, would be the only thing anyone talked about. In the makeup room afterward, the hosts gathered in a tense, private circle. Sarah was the first to break the silence. That was rough. Joy exhaled slowly. I've never seen anything like that on this show. Alyssa looked directly at Sunny. Do you really think that went the way you wanted it to? Sunny folded her arms. I said what I believe. I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry for that. Nobody is asking you to be sorry for what you believe, Whoopi said as she stepped into the room. But how we treat guests matters. How we conduct ourselves matters. He came on the show with political baggage, Sunny insisted. That was fair game. Everything is fair game. Whoopi agreed. But there's a way to approach things that allows for actual conversation instead of confrontation. Sunny stood abruptly. So I'm the bad guy now? I'm the one who gets blamed because a guest couldn't handle being questioned? You're not the bad guy, Sarah said softly. But maybe acknowledge that it could have gone better. Sunny grabbed her bag. I'm not going to apologize for being passionate about issues that matter. And with that, she walked out. The remaining hosts sat in heavy silence. After a moment, Joy whispered, This is going to be everywhere. I know, Whoopi said quietly. People are going to have opinions, Alyssa added. They always do, Whoopi replied. Back in the studio, crew members were already discussing the fallout. Audience members who had witnessed the moment were texting everyone they knew. Videos were being clipped, uploaded, and shared. The clip of Clint Eastwood walking off The View would become one of those rare television moments that lodged itself instantly into the public consciousness. Not because of political talking points. Not because of policy disagreements. But because of what it revealed: a public, undeniable breakdown of civil discourse. Because it showed what happens when passion eclipses respect. When the desire to win an argument overwhelms the desire to understand another person. Clint Eastwood had stepped onto that stage expecting a challenging interview. He was ready for tough questions. What he wasn't ready for was hostility disguised as inquiry, or for someone who had already decided he was the enemy before he even sat down. Someone who saw him not as a human being shaped by decades of experiences, but as a symbol of everything she opposed. And when pushed too far, even Clint Eastwood, famous for composure, for patience, for that slow, measured burn, had reached his limit. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cursed. He hadn't stormed off in anger. He had simply chosen to leave rather than participate in something that had stopped being a conversation and become something else entirely. Now the stage sat empty. Lights dimmed. Crew rolled cables and dismantled cameras. But the impact of what had happened would not be cleaned up so easily. It would ignite debates about how we speak to one another, about whether respectful disagreement was becoming impossible, about whether shows like this truly wanted dialogue or only spectacle. Clint Eastwood had made hundreds of films, won Oscars, become an American icon. But this moment, this single interview gone wrong, would be one of the most talked about incidents of his long career. Not because of what he did, but because of what was done to him. And because he responded with dignity in the face of disrespect. The sun was setting outside the studio. Another day of television winding down. But the conversation about what had happened on The View that day was just